One of the hot topics is the deeming rate. Now, the deeming rate isn't an easy thing to get your head around, but if you're affected, you're probably angry. Now, if you're a retiree with a savings account or other kinds of financial assets, the government deems you to earn between 1.75 and 3.25% interest on that asset. Now, perhaps it's a lump sum in an interest-bearing deposit. It all depends on how much you have in, say, the bank. The deeming rate threshold for 3.25% starts at $51,200 for a single, so just over $50,000, and $85,000 for a pensioner couple. Now, as one finance commentator told me this week, if you're 80, you can't go out and earn that money again. But the interest that you're supposed to have earned as income, they deem that you have earned, no matter whether you did or you didn't. It affects your pension, your veterans' entitlements, and whether or not you're entitled to a Commonwealth Seniors card. Now, the trouble is, most interest-bearing accounts aren't earning anywhere near what the government deems they earn. The RBA cash rate, as you know, is now down to 1%. Interest on term deposits is around 2%, and it's very short then of that 3.25%. Seniors groups said this weekend that the Morrison government has taken deeming diddling to an historic new level. Now, I did try to get Social Services Minister Anne Ruston to join me tonight to discuss the deeming rate, because I heard a lot from pensioners, and not just aged pensioners but also defence veterans, about this when the Reserve Bank dropped that official cash rate this week, but her office didn't respond to my request. Linda Burney is the Shadow Minister for Social Services, and I spoke to her a short while ago and started by saying that according to this weekend's press, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg confirmed that Cabinet's Expenditure Review Committee would meet shortly to consider changes to the deeming rate, and the Australian Financial Review seems to think this will happen by Christmas. I asked her if she considers that that's a reasonable timeframe.
Well, I don't think it's a reasonable timeframe, and you said yourself you've spoken to many pensioners who are very clearly understanding this unfair deeming rate. As you've pointed out, there are no term deposits or investments that provide a 3.25% dividend for pensioners, and yet this is what most pensioners, over 600,000, are being deemed to be earning on their savings. And I think we've spoken before, I mean, pensioners are very conservative, very careful people, and it is patently unfair, the current deeming rate, and I don't think people should have to wait till Christmas.
The spread between the Reserve Bank's official cash rate and the deeming rate is now the largest since the Keating Labor government, according to the Australian Financial Review weekend. What do you think is a reasonable rate?
I have not got in my mind an exact figure, but I've heard, you know, if the government's going to only bring it back by 0.5%, I don't think that's acceptable. The government needs to look at where the best income is from the various term deposits that are around, something like 2%. So deeming rates need to at least come back to what the best dividend is for pensioners that they can achieve through other means. I mean, at the end of the day, pensioners and, part pensioners in particular, are being deemed to be earning more than what they're actually earning, and that is a very unfair situation. The government recognises that, and it is within the government's powers to work out exactly how much this would cost the budget, to work out exactly who's being affected, and to also make the changes with really the stroke of a pen.
We understand the government wants to get that budget, wants to hit that budget surplus. That's one of the things that they campaigned so strongly on in the election. If it damages that in any way, is that a good enough reason to only lower that deeming rate by a small amount?
Look, that's a matter for the government. The point that I'm making as the Shadow Minister is that the deeming rate needs to be fair. and it needs to be something aligned with what the best dividend is that people can find out there in the market. I understand the government's desire to have a surplus, and of course that's important. I'm not saying it isn't important, but the government is responsible for the deeming rate, and the government's responsible for the unfairness of it that exists now. We all know that there has been no change to the deeming rate, no proper review since 2015, and frankly, and I met with pensioner groups just last week, and they are all acutely aware that there needs to be a change in the deeming rate, and I hope the government recognises that.
In the weekend financial review, Linda Burney, they write that under the coalition government, the gap has now blown out from 1% in 2013 to more than 2.25%, despite 5 separate interest rate cuts since the last deeming change in 2015. And national seniors are really angry about it. Ian Henschke's come out and said pensioners will be gobsmacked and then angry when they see this data that's been uncovered this weekend. What have they told you?
Well, what you've described is exactly the situation. Most pensioners or part pensioners are paying are experiencing the upper end of the deeming rate. That's the 3.25, and yet, as you say, Jane, the cash rate has now been reduced to a record low of 1%. And anyone can see that those sums are not fair. The pensioner groups, or the pensioner group that the seniors group that I've met with during the week, and the many calls and contacts we've had into my office, are saying that people are doing it tough. The deeming rate is what the part pension is worked out at, and therefore people feel very aggrieved that their pensions in many cases have been reduced because of a deeming rate that's unrealistic.
Linda Burney, thanks for joining us tonight on Kenny on Sunday.
Thank you.